Let us begin. Good morning. I'm Paula Montgomery. My pronouns are she and her. So at this point, I have just silenced my phone. I invite you all to silence your electronic devices, whatever they may be, so you won't get embarrassed during the service. I want to welcome everyone. Everyone. I'm so glad that you're here. I'd also like to thank all the people who came to the Just Pensacola, it was called a summit about affordable housing. We were well represented. I believe we had 19 people there. And out of a congregation this small, that is phenomenal. Congratulations to all of us for standing up for justice. We will now have our chalice lighting, which, yes, is a responsive reading. I will read the first part, all the part that's sort of in a normal script, and y'all will read the stuff that's bolder. We gather, we bring our sorrows, our disappointments, our failures. We gather for healing, for laughter, and to rejoice. We gather to find new ways of loving, new ways of thinking, new ways of being. We gather, yes, we always gather, for it is in gathering that we find our hope. I invite you to continue arriving while during the 8 principles are shown on the screen.
Opening words come from a poem by William Stafford. The way it is. There's a thread you follow. It goes among things that change, but it doesn't change. People wonder about what you are pursuing. You have to explain about the thread, but it is hard for others to see. While you hold it, you can't get lost. Tragedies happen, people get hurt or die, and you suffer and get old. Nothing you do can stop time's unfolding. You don't ever let go of the thread. I invite you to stand and join us now for hymn number 354, verses 1 and 4. The words will be on the screen.
We dance, we
And please say with me our covenant. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. You may be seated. Okay. At this point, we will invite our children to go to their own class, and we will sing them out with Go Now in Peace. In some of the books I've read, they describe a group of children walking behind their teacher as a crocodile. And so we just had our own crocodile, and it was lovely. At this point, it is time for us to unbuckle our wallets and remember that this church is supported by the loving contributions of its members and friends. And we will pass the basket. It's hard to keep from dancing sometimes. It's now my pleasure to introduce our speaker today. She is our own Claire Helton. She is a humanist hospice chaplain, a lover of feminist spirituality, and a firm believer in the power and promise of vulnerable connection in community. She is also a mentor in training with the OutoftheBox organization, which will be the focus of her presentation today. Claire.
Good morning. Well, I am Claire Helton. My pronouns are she and her. I am delighted to be here today to tell you a story. It's a story that holds all of the most important things: longing and trust, courage and setbacks, and resolution, maybe. The truth is, the story I'm going to tell you today holds the potential for all of those things, or none. And only you will know what it holds for you. So let me back up and offer some context. And what I'm really here to share with you today is a tool that I use in my work as a chaplain. It's a storytelling tool called OutoftheBox. I think we have a slide with the OutoftheBox logo for you. And so then, as you can see in the next slide with all the photos after that, this is a tool that does, in fact, involve telling stories with materials taken out of a box, a literal box. And I brought mine for show and tell, although I won't really get to use it today at the pulpit. So your first thought might be, oh, that looks like it would be great for children. And it definitely is. There is a pilot program using it in schools in the UK, and they're having some really encouraging results when it comes to mental health and wellness for those kids. But my favorite audience to use it with is adults, because I think it gives us permission to access our playfulness, our creativity and wonder and imagination in ways that we often suppress. And when we can access that playfulness, it often allows us to sort of come in through a side door to touch some of those deeper emotions, fear and grief and anger, that drive so much of our decision-making and behavior, but often unconsciously. And so for me, it's a tremendous tool for use across generations. The stories in Out-of-the-Box curriculum are intentionally chosen to deal with some of the deepest issues we face in life: conflict, control and the loss of it, change and the grief that it brings. And yes, we engage those topics by telling stories with materials that come out of the box, but it's also about the experience of allowing ourselves to engage our lives and the stories that drive us in out-of-the-box ways, to give ourselves permission to turn things upside down, to examine what feels right and what feels off, what feels familiar and draws us in. It's an invitation to curiosity and wonder, and at least in my experience, to an increased sense of well-being. So what is actually involved in using this tool? You are getting the large group experience today, but come back in 2 weeks and I will be hosting a more typical out-of-the-box session in the library during second hour. So although we'll get that wide lens view today, I do want to give an idea of what's generally involved, and if it sounds like something you would find meaning in, I would be so glad to have you join us for second hour on June 2nd. So in an out-of-the-box session, we would typically gather in a circle with 5 to 15 curious souls, and we would start with what we call building the circle. So I have a building the circle slide for us. So this usually involves a prompt for a brief reflection on what we're bringing with us into the circle that day. So a question like, what's been the heart of your week so far? Or what color best describes how you're feeling today? And answers can be as serious or as silly as you're feeling that day. So I'm actually going to invite you now to take 10 to 15 seconds, turn to someone near you, and we'll answer that question. What color, how did I phrase it? What color describes how you're feeling today? Maybe take 5 seconds, think about it. I'll give us 20 seconds on the clock. All right, welcome back, welcome back. I think my color is yellow today. I should have known that would not be a quick thing. You guys have the whole rainbow, I think. So after we have built the circle, which I promise is a little bit more conducive to group building when you're actually in a small group circle, then it's time to cross the threshold into the story. So the stories we draw from in out-of-the-box sessions span wisdom traditions from ancient religious parables, from Buddhism, Christianity, Judaism, Taoism, to more recent expressions of wisdom found in poetry or even children's literature. No matter the source, an out-of-the-box story is always presented as story, not right or wrong, true or false. A story, usually told with as few words as possible, so that it can be as open-ended as possible and truly serve as an invitation to inner growth and to dialogue and the building of community in the reflections that happen after the story. Some of the stories are barely one sentence long. Even the one you're about to hear might be shorter than you expect, and there will be a lot of silence. So just prepare yourself. But here's the thing to remember. It's not really about what's happening in the story itself. It's what happens inside of you during the story, during the experience of it. So listen to the story, be present for it, and when the story is over, I'll invite us to notice how our bodies, our hearts, our minds reacted along the way. So I have a slide here that mentions the threshold, because in an out-of-the-box session, we usually begin with a short liturgy that serves as a kind of aspirational statement for what we hope this circle and this community will be. So I'll go through that liturgy now. Begins with, now we have time to breathe. In this community of trust, we listen and explore feelings, and there is space to wonder and to play in love. And so now, if you're ready for a story, I won't be telling it live because you wouldn't be able to see the pieces, but I've recorded it, and so we'll play a video, and then we'll jump back in live as soon as the story ends. Your story, my story, our story. Let's be curious about this story. There was once a person who had an idea. It felt good, but the person wasn't quite sure what to do with it. It didn't seem to fit in. The person walked away from the idea. But it followed them. Some people didn't like the idea. And so, the person hid it away. But this made them feel sad. And anyway, the idea wouldn't stay hidden. So, the person decided to take the idea somewhere safe. Somewhere they could lie on the ground, gaze up at the stars, and dream. The idea required lots of attention. And the more the person cared for the idea, the bigger it grew. Others were interested. And they brought their own ideas. Together, they played with all of them. The ideas helped them to see things differently and to do things differently. So I invite us to get curious about how we feel. If we move to the next slide, you'll see some wondering questions. I wonder what you liked. Was there a moment in the story that felt like a yes moment to you? A moment that maybe made you smile? We'll take another 20 seconds or so this time just for silence to give yourself a moment to consider what you liked. If you have something to write with and want to jot it down, feel free, but you can also just reflect quietly. What did you like? So if we were in a small group, we would have dialogue about this. And because we're in such a large group, let me just offer a few observations that I've heard from folks when using this story. And if one resonates, hooray. And if not, maybe notice that too. So maybe you liked the moment when the idea followed the person. Maybe you liked that they took the idea somewhere safe. Maybe you smiled or felt a sense of peace when they were able to lie down and look at the stars. Or maybe you liked when the other people joined in at the end. Maybe you liked some other moment or aspect of the story, but in naming it out loud to the group, participants have the opportunity for deeper examination of not just what you liked, but why you liked it. What did it speak to inside? So the next question is, what didn't you like? Was there a no moment for you, a moment of pushback or dissonance? I'm going to give us 20 more seconds to reflect silently. What didn't you like? So some of the responses that I often hear with this story, maybe you didn't like when the person hid the idea away. Maybe you didn't like that the other people wouldn't embrace the idea in the first place. Or maybe it felt off to you that at the end, only one of those other people came to join in and the other was left standing alone. Whatever it was that you didn't like, I wonder why you didn't like it. I wonder what value of yours seemed to be in conflict with that moment in the story. And so the last question is this: what did the story remind you of? Our brains make connections to parallel experiences of similar stories automatically, but when we call attention to them, we have that opportunity for deeper reflection. So we'll take one last moment, 20 seconds of silence to reflect on what this story reminded you of. So what we're lacking by doing this in a large group is the opportunity to each give voice, right, to the wondering that we're doing together. And the "what did this remind you of" question is often the place where we're able to bring our most vulnerable selves to the table, and then to have the gift of holding that space for one another. So just for a couple of examples, in a recent group where this story was told, I heard one participant describe the difficulty that she was having getting some nonprofit work that she was really passionate about off the ground, getting it past the idea stage and into reality. There's a lot of disappointment there. And in that same group, another person shared that when she saw the person hide the idea away, she was immediately reminded of her adult gay son who had felt that he had to hide his sexuality for much of his life. So talk about space for vulnerable connection. I don't know what it might have brought up for you, but I hope that whatever it was, maybe you'll connect with someone about it later today, if you need something to talk about over coffee after the service. So the final step in an out-of-the-box session is actually my favorite, and we don't have a way of engaging this together here and now, but it's called community play. So we can go to the next slide. In this last movement, the pieces of the story are cleared away, and participants then have the opportunity to use all the different materials in the box to create a landscape of their emotional state, or the state of their community, their church, their organization. And then we get to use these lovely emotion figurines to place yourself into the landscape, which gives an opportunity to stake a claim, to acknowledge to yourself, yeah, this is how I'm feeling. And sometimes the wisdom in this segment comes not just from within, but from something that someone else offers. So I was in a session recently when someone added a rushing river to the landscape because life had just been chaotic and relentless. But for another person, that river created the perfect spot to rest. She chose the sitting figure up here and put herself up against a tree, listening to the sound of the water, helping her to acknowledge, okay, I know what I need, and so now maybe I can take that with me and hopefully offer that to myself in the days ahead. The goal in all of it is to tap into that inner wisdom that resides in each of us, to nourish our sense of wonder, and to increase well-being. I find that when I finish an out-of-the-box session, my heart rate is usually lower than it was when I started. And I almost always have some new pearl of wisdom to carry with me through the days ahead. It's not unlike what happens when we gather here. This is a community that strives to be a safe and a brave space where all of our ideas can be held gently. So your invitation today is twofold. If the story today spoke to you and called out some idea within you that's waiting to be shared with others or played with, especially if it's an idea that might involve people in this community, then take this as your sign to connect with someone over it. And secondly, if the format and the method here spoke to you, or if you just really want to get your hands on those little figurines and materials, I would be delighted for you to join me in just a couple of weeks for that second hour. And in the meantime, I will close the way we close each session, for all that's been said and for all that hasn't been. Thank you.
I invite you now to join in our closing hymn, number 6, and we'll give the choir a minute to assemble itself.
closing words today come from the UU hymnal. As we've gathered in this place, we've been reminded of our highest aspirations and inspired to bring our gifts of love and service to the altar of humanity. May we go out knowing once again that we are not isolated beings, but connected in mystery and miracle to the universe, to this community, and to each other. Go in peace.